Esports. It is the Direwolves, and we head to Bank.
We sure do, and as you alluded to, Jake, not only is this two incredibly strong rosters on paper going head-to-head, but we do, of course, need to address the underlying drama, if you would, between these two, namely Reaps jumping across to Bleed and the fallout that ensued. Of course, this isn't a podcast, so we're not going to go into too much detail into that lore, but all you need to know is Direwolves are probably not the biggest fans of Reaps, and Reaps may not be the biggest fan in response. So just adds that extra little bit to what is already going to be a very good game.
I kind of wanted to do a little bit of lore filling here during the ban phase. The Ossa, though, I did want to touch on that. Typically, a very prominent operator on Bank, especially for those CEO, executive plants. So that getting banned out, along with the Nook as well. I like those bans. This should make it a very fascinating game. But, you know, for those unaware, obviously Reaps, formerly a member of Direwolves, joining at the back of Stage 3 last year. And they went flawless in said Stage 3. They went over to Sweden. Everything looked amazing. And then he leaves the roster, and there's drama, and everyone's got different stories. And then, of course, SI, it's a bomb. It didn't quite go that well. ED retires. Everything's a shambles. But I tell you what, guys, you know, back in Stage 3, Direwolves didn't play Bank once. You know when they played Bank? Back in Stage 1. What did they do in Stage 1? They went 7-0. This team has a history before Reaps. This team was champions before Reaps. They had an identity before Reaps. 7-0, and they played Bank 3 times in that stage of 7 games. This is their map. This is their home. And I think they're about to show Reaps that he's made the mistake of a lifetime. And it was largely this roster, basically, minus ED. And obviously, in comes Ray. Harambe, of course, was formerly a part of the Direwolves as a core player back in Stage 1 last year. So they will be very familiar with this.
Have Direwolves big brain the veto? It's been a long time since it's been in their rotation. Perhaps a lulling Bleed into a false sense of security, leaving it up so late. Very interesting. We'll see how it plays out. A roam here from Direwolves, a basement defense. Souffle begins his run up above in stock. Expect Bleed to enter CEO across, maybe get top square presence as well. Reaps will probably be the one to lead the charge here on entry. But Souffle cut down. Reaps is alive. He was earlier tonight. He's still wired. Souffle down. Reaps will confirm that. It's as easy as him now jumping in and getting that kill.
Nah, I'm just a little bit giddy. Just a fan. Well, obviously, we've been doing APAC for a long time now, and this one has a lot of meaning of it. And, of course, it's Reaps that gets the opening kill. It had to be. I wouldn't have accepted anything else but that. Pika obviously trying to just backfill in over towards that stock hallway, but it's too late. And it's not really as much of a power position here. Hoven, that's a wonderful push-up banana stairs. Catches Pika. But Pika gets away with not that much of a scratch on him. Of course, it's basement here for round 1, but I love the presence up above from Direwolves. They're taking the fight straight away to Bleed. But it's Reaps that got the opening kill. He got the opening punch to land. What have the Direwolves got in response?
Not much. Pika's still lurking around, but surely will be spotted, and he is now stuck in a corner. Immediately cut off. Oh, but Pika does cross. Reaps, however, on the prowl, and it's him to confirm that one as well. 5 versus 3. Bleed doing a lot of good work. Ray, though, now the one to roam. So Direwolves continue to replenish these positions. But it's all falling apart. Jackie Wu is the only one left alongside, and he'll be on site. Ray does get one, but obviously now called out. He's isolated on 1 HP.
Spray and move as Reaps gets the second kill of this round for him onto Jackie Wu. He'll make that 3. And he says, hello, do you remember me? Like a phantom in the night, he just goes whack, and he gets 3 kills in the opening round. That is the dream start for Bleed Esports. That is the dream start for Reaps. For the Direwolves, though, guys, they went on the offense, on the defense to begin. A locker CCTV hold, and we didn't even get really a glimpse of the site itself. And you look at really the picks that they're bringing into this one. The Capcan, the Echo, the Smoke, a lot more denial. I'm expecting a lot more site play. I think they wanted to try and catch Bleed off guard, go for a bit more presence up above. We saw that early, a bit of a stock hold, stock corridor. It probably wasn't the play for a Locker CCTV site. In the end, it obviously didn't work, but it's only one round, and I think they'll go back to a little bit more normality here in the second round, and we'll see a bit more defense on site.
Yeah, it's such a cat and mouse game for Direwolves on defense because they can probably go in with two very distinct mindsets. Do we expand? Do we roam? Do we try and make contact with the likes of Reaps early, try and cut him down? Because if Reaps dies early, that's probably the round one, and it'll be secured quite early on into the piece. Or do we play more reserved on site and not allow him on that entry to wreak havoc, but then run the risk of having issues on some of the objectives of Bank, which can be difficult to trade out late. So, yeah, it's a tricky one for Direwolves, but it's something they'll need to deal with quickly because Reaps tends to just continue to get better and better and more confident throughout a game. But he's already looking good at 3k to kick things off.
And he'd be, obviously, have scheduled this game in. He'd be looking at this and saying, I want to play at my absolute very best. And, well, as proven at the end of Stage 3 last year, he was basically the best in APAC. No one touched him. I think he had a 1.28 rating. That is literally off the top of my head, but close to that, if not. He was rated as the best player at the conclusion of the APAC League. And he's playing like it in that opening round. But yeah, look at the presence difference from Direwolves, right? Not so much top floor, a little bit more middle floor, but still not really as much on site. There is a lot more of a hold, though, over towards that open area staff room position, which is quite common for Locker CCTV these days, to sort of lock down that position. Sometimes you see it with the castle guys and the barricades and blocking off beepers and things like that. But not really the way that they're playing it, obviously. And Pika's still sort of just lingering over towards Tellers and close by to Archives. Minute 40 left in the round. And I think Bleed are just sort of wondering, well, if they're not playing on site, we can just kind of rush on. And that's exactly what they're going to do. Not a lot of square control either. So I wonder if this backfires once again for the Direwolves.
Yeah, this is a good read from Bleed, able to open up server, get pressure site. Hatch reinforced, so Direwolves can't pressure and pincer from that position. It's going to come down to a square flank and to the plant denial itself. Now there is a Nitro in red. Pika has that in hand, and there's Yokai is potentially available as well for Jackie Wu, but Mentalist has a couple of opportunities to bait this out. Can't stick it the first time, so there's the Yokai denial. Bleed yet to deal with that. Nitro flies out, doesn't quite land 4 versus 4, but Ray down up above, so Bleed with a slight advantage. Mentalist attempts to plant once more, but Pika is square. Needs to be mindful top square. This is such a volatile round. Pika survives.
Obviously, that hatch can be opened up. It is soft. 40 seconds left. Has the Nitro Cell, still didn't get rid of it. Ray is still down. Hasn't been brought back up on the cap can. You mentioned it. Mentalist was going for the plant, but he got off of it. And didn't see why. This is an interesting little move here from Asfi. Obviously blocked by the pillar, trying to utilize the gap between the leaves. But is not able to find it tight. He'll get the pixel here. Surely spots the elbow of Souffle. But he couldn't get the down. And again, Mentalist will go for the plant. This time it is successful. And he avoids the Nitro Cell. And Reaps finds that kill eventually onto Ray, who was obviously down for the count anyway. So the plant is successful. And from here, it's very difficult to get the retake, especially in a 1v4. It's a 2-0 start on the attack here on Bank for Bleed Esports. The dream start.
And this is some really good textbook siege from Bleed. They use their drones to clear top floor. They use their drones to gain information that server was clear and site was quite exposed. They probably had a man count as to how many roamers there were. They then quickly acted on that information. You could see how tightly knit they were. Entering server straight away, they had about a minute and a half to pressure plant, and Mentalist didn't overinvest in going for the plant. He baited it out a couple of times. They withered down that utility. Players were tasked with holding square, for example, and making sure that Direwolves couldn't retake and pressure from the biggest vulnerability of that push. So they did a really, really nice job of making sure that that round was almost impossible for Direwolves to bring back. Ultimately, that sits the scoreline now 2 apiece. And Direwolves, I think, are really now going to start feeling the pressure.
And obviously, there's a lot of attention on Reaps, but I kind of just want to touch on Mentalist for a second, guys, because really, ever since he left Fnatic, it's been it's been a rough ride, especially coming to APAC South back in 2022 with IG. All those years, all those stages where they just kept underperforming. A bunch of 5th, a 7th, and that was with Tide. Maybe this is the team where Mentalist can feel like he can get back towards the top. I mean, even, I'm going to be blunt here, his Fnatic years as a team, they weren't that great, especially in APAC North. Only making 1 playoff stage back in 2021. So for a player that's obviously had a lot of success historically, it has gone astray in the last year or two. Intriguing team that's been put together, but a lot of talent. Direwolves, though, need to respond in this 3rd round. CEO Executive. Remember, no Oster for the plant. You typically see top square. And it's Pika with the opening kill onto Hoven. That's what the Direwolves need.
And that's perhaps the first sign of sloppiness that we've at least caught on Kane. If you're on that rappel, it's critical that you have information lobby or someone hard holding that position, because it's quite easy for the defense to sneak a pick, and that's exactly what happens. So well played by Direwolves. One of the first signs of proactivity that we have seen. Good use of the Rotero from Ashby. That's the stock hallway shield taken care of very easily, very quickly. And that just weakens that position for Souffle ever so much. And something that he'll need to be mindful of later, especially if he wants to lock down top square.
As we're just opening up a little bit more of that top square wall. Minute 20 left in the round. Reaps goes roaming. Open area. You can obviously lodge that nade up towards Janitor, but Souffle has just edged out of it for now. Over towards that stock hallway. Doesn't find the mark. Doesn't really find a player. Back over towards the rappel side for Bleed. They're not so much a square take. They will go closer towards the rappel side. Reaps is playing a very patient game here. There's only 50 seconds left, guys. He can't sit here forever. Ashby tries to get a bit of intel, obviously with the Rotero. Does spot Harambe over towards long desk. And it's Jackie Wu that pops up and gets the kill onto the Flores. So now a 2-player advantage for the Direwolves, but here comes Reaps. With knife in hand, he goes searching for blood. Jackie Wu's position is known. Reaps brings it back to a 3 versus 3. There's no way that this guy is this good. It shouldn't be allowed. And now suddenly with 25 seconds left in the round, it's a very winnable 3 versus 3. Plant is in hand with Mentalist. Who's going to be the one to deny? Reaps watches the corridor. Surely we don't see the peak. The run past Janitor does not happen. He plays Protector. He probably expects the flank. And he will get flanked by Souffle. The Wamai stands up tall. The frag to deny the plant. It's successful from Souffle. Not in stopping it, but at least getting the kill onto Mentalist. Skux in a 1v3. Waits for the jump bounce. He'll get 1 or 2. He'll get 2. No! Ray clutches up. It wasn't probably going to be any time to stop the counter defuse, but still closer than they needed to make it. Regardless, Direwolves are on the board.
A good response from Direwolves, decent pressure throughout that round, and then in the 3-on-1 post, timing the jump out well. Even if Skux had found the 2K, wouldn't have had enough time to find the 3rd. Reaps in the mid-round, great grenade. Almost salvaged it, but Souffle then with the flank. So some real big individual efforts from Direwolves in that round. And they ensure that Bleed do not have a perfect start to that first rotation. Direwolves able to go now back down below, keeping in mind Bleed showed great adaptation last time. They saw a weakness server and they exploited it. So let's see what the response from Direwolves will be.
Yeah, and it's a complete change-up lineup-wise as well, guys. You bring the Thorn, the Azami, the Goyo. None of these operators brought last time. It was more the Capcan, the Smoke was obviously there. But they didn't really play into it. And they obviously didn't play into any kind of denial. So I do wonder if this time, do you just try and play the Harambe gas babes a lot better? Do you try and play a little bit more on-site defense? Over towards server, do you have a keeper barrier set up? Do you try and defend that a little bit more? Bot square hatch, does that actually get, reinforced? All these kind of things, yeah, it does. So big change up. Shield goes up, top blue stairs as well, or at least attempting to. collects himself a free drone. Regardless, this is going to be the third different strategy for this one site.
Jackie Wu as well, playing blue shotgun with the Thorn, deployable shield. So we'll see how that eventuates, but a great way to put pressure on that corner of the map. A portion of the map that was left uncontested last time. So it's conserved in some metrics, but also slightly more aggressive in others. All 5 members now on the basement floor, a stark contrast to the previous attempt. Bleed have shown so far that they're quick at gathering information, quick at acting upon it, so they'll already have control now of first floor and that rotation. We'll see though what the approach is for the plant. A couple of options. They could go for a back push through the likes of Volt and Gold, or they could go for a slightly more standard push in through server, but that means they need to clear blue, and they need to start doing it quite quickly because it does often take a lot of time to draw out that utility, the smoke canisters from Harambe being a key one.
Shield gets cleared. That forced Jackie Wu to go for a peek. You know what Jackie Wu is capable of when he's at his best. He is a very, very solid fragger. We'll get droned out here. Obviously, drone gets tried, but happy to just sit with the shotgun for now. But does probably feel the pressure. I don't know if re-peeking that with a shotgun from bottom of blue stairs was the play, and he gets punished for it. At that point, guys, I think you've just got to give it up. And he tried to retake it.
Yeah, I think either way, he is likely to die, but he could have potentially wasted another 5 or so seconds, which could be critical. Look at the time. Only about 35 remains, and Harambe all 3 gas canisters. So they cannot go for a default plant. Bleed cannot go for that default plant. They'll need to go deep. Direwolves should be ready for it.
They've got plenty of flashes available, though, for, in fact, Asphy over towards main stairs. 20 seconds left. The flashes will go out. It's Reach that falls quickly here in the initial push. Mentalist will go for the plant. They're just trying to put the pressure on. Harambe throws out the gas babe to deny it and has done so successfully with a bit of help from the nitro cell of Pika. The utility combination here for the Direwolves is on point. They have arrived on Bank, and we've got ourselves an absolute barn burner brewing on Bank. It's 2-2. The Direwolves responding after Bleed came out of the gate swinging in the opening 2 rounds. We go into the 5th tied.
Yeah, much more reserve there from Direwolves. It pays off. So I can only assume that's going to shape their mentality now for the final 2 rounds of the half. Instead of going for huge roams and trying to cut down entries and trying to disrupt reaps, instead they'll probably just create a couple of obstacles and be a lot more willing to fall back and trade out to the death on site. Of course, on basement, that's much more organic and easier to execute upon in comparison to a site like open area. It's not as straightforward because the objective itself is a little less linear, but I do think that mindset could work, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's what they'll stick with now that they've seen success for a couple of rounds.
Well, so far I think it's lived up to the hype a bit, Guz. In the opening 2 rounds, we've kind of had what we expected. Reaps starting well, a response from the Direwolves. I think it's really followed the script nicely.
5 seconds to go.
Great start. Do we get a great ending? Kind of head into the mid portion now of this match. Final 2 rounds to go in the opening half. I think 3-3 is probably the scoreline I would think is after. When I think of Bag, you know, in history, when it first came back into the map pool, it probably favored the attackers ever so slightly, but defense has picked up on it. It's a really good net neutral map. Good pressure from the Direwolves, though, on these sites. They've been able to play a lot better when they're on site. Off site, maybe a bit questionable in the roam game. I think you've got to adapt, and if the roam game's not going to work against a team like Bleed, there's nothing wrong with that. Just fall back to site.
We'll see then. How do they posture Pika inside of stock? That's an assertive kill, and onto Reaps, who in my opinion had the jump, had the advantage by dropping down and catching Pika, perhaps off guard. Maybe missed a couple of shots. We didn't see his point of view. But we certainly saw the kill feed, and it lit up orange, which is great for the Direwolves. No trade in sight for Bleed. So, on the side of defense, they'll be quite happy with that result. They'll rotate back now towards site. At least 4 players will. Pika, I presume, is elsewhere. And he's just down below. Able to cut down against any lurk. Where to here from Bleed? Applying pressure on the vert, they'll be able to clear out those positions, but keep in mind, everyone on site. So Dire was looking quite cozy at the moment.
Yeah, and this is where I'm very intrigued for Bleed. What is your identity as a team? Is it just the Reaps show?
Located by attackers.
Or is it a team? You've lost your entry frag, you've lost your star player, but you've still got 4 players up, 4 very crucial players. Your hard breach, your soft breach, your frag, Sucks, and your Ash as well. You've got everything needed to still win this round. This is where they just can't be a one-man army. Not saying that they are. They really do need to not be the kind of team that just relies on their star player. Skux so far has started well. Melvin as well, 8 kills between the 2 of them. So clearly they've got firepower spread out on this roster. Under 40 seconds left. Expecting the flank from down below. That's Pika on the Solus sitting down there comfortably. Mentalist though loses his life, and that's Diffuser outside as well. That's a big, big kill for Raid. And Skux is still so prioritized about Pika at the bottom of main stairs. There's 20 seconds left.
Attackers recovered the.
Got to make something happen here, Bleed. You are the attackers. You've got to get on the front foot. Ray gets a little bit overzealous. He'll get punished. He'll lose his life, but watching and waiting. Well, Souffle and Jackie Wu, they both combine. Direwolves have really picked up the pace in the last 3 rounds. And now put Bleed on the ropes. And yeah, it just all kind of was a little bit stagnant from Bleed. No reaps, no entries, no kills, no answers. The Direwolves on the defense come home strong here in the first half. Now over to CEO Executive for the last round in this half.
Yeah, I think Direwolves' experience now really starting to shine through. They've gotten a really good read as to what Bleed's strengths and weaknesses so far on Bank have been. Bleed looked very exposed against late round tradeouts, and even more so now when Reaps is down. But Direwolves doing a great job to fight their way into the lead now, and perhaps in a position to extend it, said Bleed. They won the previous attempt here on CEO. They did unfortunately let the plant go down, but played it well in the post. So let's see what their approach may be this time.
10 seconds left before insertion. Bomb located by
And it's a good
attackers.
opportunity for Bleed as well. Now kind of on the back foot.
5 seconds
You started well. You really got out of the blocks early. Got a couple of good sucker punches onto the Direwolves, especially Reaps in that opening round. Picking up a triple kill to start in this grudge match that it is. But you know, now that we've kind of settled into the game, I feel like, as you said, the Direwolves' experience is starting to really shine through. And this is where the questions for Bleed will come from is, what are their own internal expectations? It's still a newly built team. It's still a new roster. It's going to take time to gain that synergy. They don't have the experience as a core unit of 5. They've got a lot of absolute raw potential and raw ability. But it takes time for it all to gel together. And this Direwolves roster has been together for years now. It's a bit of a rare feat in the Siege world.
Progress over towards stock stalled out a little bit with that impact, but a hole still created. That shield was taken down very early last time by Bleed. Ashvi with the Roteres was able to achieve that, so I would assume something similar is to be expected. Harambe rotates a Yokai drone meanwhile to just provide a bit of information. Reaps on the rappel, tapping away. Last time we saw Bleed posture, the main breach went for a plant behind the CEO bomb chassis for coverage. Without OSA available, that's pretty standard. And then try to play the rappels for the cross late. We'll see if Reaps there can be facilitated through stock. Grenade in hand to try and clear the keeper barrier. It lands straight now into the Gemini. Spots that information, but doesn't have the confidence and the peace of mind just yet to be able to jump in.
Yeah, double stack top main for Pika and Souffle does leave corridor a little bit vulnerable, especially that janitor position for the moment to come in there. And it can allow that top square pushed in. But at least they're kind of together. And here comes Harambe though to backfill in over towards janitor. So they're covering positions well. They're moving around on defense well now, the Direwolves. You know, the first 2 rounds, they were just all over the place. They were really off-site. Now they're keeping everything a bit more contained. And it's working out really well for them. You know, they're basically giving Bleed top square. They don't care. And there's no Ossa, so that's a good reason to do it. Jackie loses his life to Skux. Bit of an angle found outside of the rappel. And that will give Bleed, obviously, the confidence now that they've got the numbers. They can push into sight. So many angles to clear. Harambe spotted Reaps into stock. That would have been called out. So they know there's one in stock. If they've still got players main stairs, I don't know how far Reaps will be able to get. He doesn't get very far. Harambe with a nice double. That was absolutely rapid. I had everything on lock. Skux outside. Will stay outside. Direwolves with a 4-2 lead at the half.
Huge 2K there from Harambe, clutching up. Able to deny the plant, deny the rappel as well. If that manages to get stuck with the rappel cross, that could have been a very, very different round. Had a great position, played it really well, identified both targets and hit his shots. That's a big streak now for the Direwolves, 4 rounds in fact. Bleed respond with a timeout of their own as we lead in now to the second half, an opportunity for them to recompose. Direwolves had a great read on them in the back half of their attack, or their defense rather. And Bleed just didn't quite have the tools in their arsenal to crack open many of those rounds.
No, they didn't. Obviously, the opening 2 rounds, the success came from those entry kills from Reaps. Once that kind of dried up, and it did, then no one else was able to really replicate that. And I think a part of it is also, it's not necessarily just Bleed, it's also what Direwolves did to adjust. At one point I referenced the fact that on Locker CCTV, they got to their 3rd different strategy. It's not often you see that, you know, okay, we didn't work the first time, didn't work this time, okay, now it works that time. They changed it up 3 times. So I think that's a big part of why the Direwolves are in this position now. They've got that ability to adapt. I think right now for Bleed, if I'm going to be honest, it's probably plan A, Reaps goes nuts. Plan B is, I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a newly built team. It's going to take time to get to the level of the Direwolves, for example, that have multiple different strategies. They've been around a long time. They know what works, doesn't work. They know what to do. If this doesn't work, we can try this, we can do this. Bleed are just kind of like learning as they go. That's just kind of the stage that they're at the moment. They've got the raw skill. That is all there to be displayed. And the other part of this as well is this might just end up being a defense side of bank. And this might just favor Bleed getting the 2 on the attack. Might be fine. We might go to OT, and then it's anyone's game. This one's not over. Not even close to being over.
Bleed as well do have defense in OT, so certainly something to keep in mind if we go the distance. Because if we do enter OT, obviously it means that they will be on the favoured side, as it would suggest a defensively sided matchup between the 2. But still a while until that may eventuate. As for the defensive structure here from Bleed on their opening attempts, there is one up above, roaming around. Clips the Gemini, so just disrupting the ability for Souffle to gather information. Teamed up with Skux up above on the Solace, and will now team up with others scattered around open area and archives. Hatch is opened, so these players can fall off. This is very, very standard and straightforward. This is a bank roam for basement to a T. The main priority is to waste time and bleed utility. None of these players will be wanting to play for their lives.
Souffle just started to push down main stairs. Skux will drop. Onto site they go, and this is a very default kind of setup here for Bleed in terms of their positioning at the moment. Mentalist obviously has to be in a good position to be able to get those gas babes to deny plan. Too sure though if the Direwolves themselves will go for the more conventional attack and take. So far, it's been a really good game from Pika. He was the lowest rated player in Stage 3 last year for the Direwolves. After some really good stages earlier in the year. Probably had a bit of a letdown by his own expectations, but he started well in this game. And they do go over towards bot square, and it looks like it will be that certain push. In towards CCTV they will go, and of course they'll be met by those gas babes, and all three still available for Mentalist.
Control inside of server, 30 seconds on the board. Mentalist still has 3 gas canisters in hand. So once again, this will not be a default plant. It may be a hatch drop. I doubt it will be a back push. Harambe will want to get down, get on that red wall, hug it, and try and get that plant down.
15 seconds left. Drop has begun. It's Reaps that gets the opening kill in this round with Atrasal, and shortly following will be Pika's death. Reaps will follow it up now with a second. This push, unfortunately for the Direwolves, just not finding the success that they were looking for. In this day and age of Siege, you cannot rely on a 20-second push. It is always really last resort, but if you get to last resort, guys, you don't find success. Bleed will get the opening round of the second half, and it's a sigh of relief after 4 rounds in a row to the Direwolves. They are finally back in the winner's position. Just no one from the Direwolves could really get anyone from Bleed to make a mistake. No one peeked, no one put a foot wrong, and that made it very difficult on a site like Locker CCTV to then push onto site.
Yeah, Bleed was super switched on. They knew how much time they had wasted on that roam. They had a really good read as to when Direwolves were going to eventually drop and go for the plant. They timed the response perfectly, cut down that first initial push. Souffle actually put in a great effort. Got a pick or two and almost was able to swing the round back, but again, Bleed were ready. There was no pressure from that garage position from Direwolves, which really helped, and they were able to get it across the line. Time has just been a huge issue on so many of these attacks so far, and a trend that I suspect will continue. Round 8, up above, clash for Asfi. Interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously means one...
I just want to bring up something that's important here, right? Because into this second half, a stat that's really damning is back in Stage 3 for the Direwolves. They only had 2 players that were positive on entry. And neither of those 2 players are on this team. It was ED and Reaps. Reaps was plus 11, ED was plus 1. Everyone else was in the negative. So who's going to be the one that, you know, can find those entry picks, open up sight, get those kills to hinder the defensive Bleed? Because if that opening round of the second half is going to be any indication as to Direwolves' offensive prowess, then Bleed are kind of back in a really good position coming into the second half.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's see how they shape up though. Direwolves, I suspect will go for top square pressure, but Pika is actually lurking down below. Maybe they'll try and catch someone off guard in stock. Or if anyone rotates down below for plant denial. Pika could, in fact, apply direct pressure on that clash with the launcher. But Asfi has already vacated that position. So Pika can just post up. No real incentive for him to move at the moment. Asfi playing aggressively on that clash, gaining information. As Pika just continues to slowly creep forward. There is potential here. A backstab onto Reaps playing that stop shield, but easier said than done.
Gets rid of one of the barbed wire. There's another one there, though. Just trying to clear out these 2 players in the stock hallway position. Very, very prominent for this kind of site. A minus say from the Direwolves. It doesn't have to be direct. They're kind of just indirectly putting the pressure on them, and so far not quite successful enough. Now with under a minute remaining, you kind of have to push the issue. What that's going to look like is it either has to be top square push, maybe someone outside on the balcony looking in from stock itself, but obviously double Rio'd off. It's just not really a whole lot of time remaining in this round. Where's the pressure coming from? They lose Harambe. who had the diffuser on the rappel outside. That is probably the round, guys.
It's
I'm
round over.
calling it already. Yeah, that's round over.
By the time they get it, that's 20 seconds. Get it back, that's even longer. So, yeah, this round has completely fallen apart. And to be honest, they weren't going to win it anyway. Way too slow. Bleed aren't really even being particularly proactive, and now they can just clean them up. Second for Scucks. Bit of pressure behind, but Reaps cleans that up. 5v2. Jackie Wu one shot. Forced into the rappels. Ray goes to collect the diffuser. A near perfect round for Bleed Esports. Direwolves really struggling.
Timeout. Timeout. That has to be a timeout. That was absolutely deplorable from the Direwolves. That is one of the worst rounds I've ever seen from them. And yeah, timeout requested. I'm on to something, guys. That's just lacking any kind of innovation, initiative. You know, 30 seconds left of the round, diffuser on the rappel outside on your hard breacher. You know, like, what are you realistically expecting to do? Even if Harambe doesn't die there, guys, like, even if he doesn't die, he's still going to get off the rappel, go and get the, like, it's like, what's the win condition there? That was just awful from the Direwolves. 4-4, and I tell you what, Bleed, they've kind of weathered the storm after a 4 attacking round, or 4 defensive round wins in a row to the Direwolves. They've really bit back, and now it feels like all the pressure, all of a sudden, is on the Direwolves.
Yeah, I totally feel that. Direwolves looked really, really lost in that round, which is so atypical for them. There was no pressure stock. The shield was still up. Pika down below never had an impact on the lurk. The hard breach on Kanto was coming out with 40 seconds to go, and then the diffuser falls and there's no backup plan. It was, yeah, a really frustrating round to watch, but I'm sure that's only even more frustrating for the Direwolves to sit through. So a great decision, in my opinion. Take that tactical reset, recompose, because it looks like this is going to be a very, very difficult bank to attack.
Yeah. And that's why probably at the half, I maybe should have actually been a little bit more kind to the Bleed Esports. It wasn't necessarily compounding them or anything, but it did kind of feel like we hadn't gotten the full picture as to what this bank was going to play out like. And yeah, evidently it looks like defense is going to be probably the more favored side, and since that is the case, with Bleed now bringing it back to 4-4, put themselves in a really, really good position. And it goes back to that stat I brought up earlier. Who's going to be the one for Direwolves to actually find the entry? And I wonder if this might actually end up being a theme for them this entire stage, where defensively they've got the strategies, they've got the positioning, they've got the mindset, but skill-wise, do they have what it takes on the offense to crack these really good teams? I'm not so sure. And they need to probably prove me wrong. They need to prove otherwise.
Open area in play, so Direwolves, as expected, will probably want to get pressure inside of CEO, clear out archives, get that vert presence. It is, however, being contested by the defense inside of a janitor. Hoven, who's quietly sitting on 7-5, mind you, having a pretty solid game. Reaps as well, playing top main with a shield. It's going to be challenging for Direwolves, made more difficult as Jackie Wu falls.
It's a long-range angle as well from Janitor for Hoven. SMG 11, that's a really nice kill. Got to give you all the credit there. Disappointing for Jackie Wu. 2 and 8, hard breach down. Only hard breacher 2. It's a rough start for Jackie Wu. Ray trying to take a peek. He can't find anything. Souffle has been droned up. Banana. Minute and a half. Time again a factor, and again it's Bleed that are just kind of strangling Direwolves. They're just not able to get anything. Now back to site. You know, you've got to kill. You forced them to clear out CEO Executive. You forced them to go up to this top floor. Time's a factor again. Everything is just going the way of Bleed Esports. Direwolves need to really kick into gear. They're in neutral at the moment.
Need to find that spark. They need to have a player that's finding a response here. It's all well and good to chip away at the groundwork, but if you're 4-5 down into the final push, you are not in a favorable position. Skux is still inside of Archives, 40 seconds to go. The Vert's finally coming through, but he's still able to run around. Will be cut off though. So that's something. 30 seconds now. Diffuser in the hands of Harambe. He was up above in CEO, making that Vert. The only real win condition I think now is to probably red bottom square, but time is dwindling.
Oh, Mentalist probably just holds that angle, and I think he finds a kill. Drone gets taken out. Can't be relying on drones at this point. There's 10 seconds left. Into red time we go. Souffle's naded himself. Pika falls, and that really just sums up this half for the Direwolves. They are just a mess right now on offense. And Bleed are just happy to sit back on site and just let them walk into them. They take the lead here on Bank for the first time since the second round. The Direwolves probably would feel like they need another timeout after that kind of round. They just can't find any semblance of attack.
The initiative is just really lacking at the moment. And Bleed, as you pretty well put, are very content in sitting back, playing very safe positions and holding those entry points. And with a lack of pressure, Direwolves aren't clearing out these players. They aren't forcing them to move away. The only real decent semblance of teamwork there was the first kill, where they're able to clear out the Echo from Archives. After that, it just completely stalled again. So these attacks are proving very, very challenging for Direwolves at the moment, and Bleed, just like that, edge towards match point
10 seconds to
on
insertion.
the 10th round. And we go back down to basement, where time management is crucial, and time management for Direwolves has been really poor so far.
Attackers are moving out to locate.
Well, we didn't see a whole lot of Bank back in Stage 3 of the APAC League last year, guys, but 2 times we saw it, had a 24% defensive win rate. It has apparently turned into a defensive juggernaut, but I think probably it's got actually less to do with the defense and just more to do with the lack of attacking options here from the Direwolves. And then you think about, how did Bleed get there to attacking around? Because it's basically Reaps. Reaps just pushed in. First round, got 3 kills. That basically just breaks the defensive structure. Second round as well, a little bit more team effort. Saw some good plays from Skux and Hoven. And then after that, Direwolves kind of shut everything down, and they were good defensively. Hoven with the opening kill. Nitrocell onto Souffle over and towards Stock. Pika gets one back immediately, and they needed that. Oh, they desperately did. Oh, and he might just get a second. A brief moment where Pika could have maybe put a dent into the defensive Bleed. It might have, I think, even been onto Reaps. It was. He survives. He's fine. He's still got a Nitrocell available as well. So 4 versus 4. Locker CCTV. How aggressive do Bleed get? I wonder, do they get a little bit too comfortable now on the defense and think they can push out and think that they can get a bit more aggressive? That might actually play into the hands of Direwolves, because Direwolves are kind of lacking the initiative. So if you give them something, they can maybe take that.
Yeah, I think the approach needs to be the same from Bleed. Just, yep, waste time, get a pick, that's a bonus, then fall off. It's as easy as that. Pika just going in blind with no backup. 4v3, minute 30. So time not the biggest of concerns for Direwolves at the moment. It will be shortly though, and you compound that with a man disadvantage, and it does not look good again for the Direwolves. Someone has to have a very big round, and I just don't really see it happening. Bleed as well later on could apply pressure on a flank as well. That will probably be left quite exposed, but for now, like the rounds before, Bleed can sit back and be quite content in their position. Mental still has 3 smoke canisters. I'm sure as well they have info on site. This is going to be, again, another uphill battle for the attack.
And the Vulcan canisters doing their job as well, so it's a really default kind of defensive setup from Bleed, not doing anything that any team would be surprised about. Basically just the stall-out tactic that we've been seeing since Bank's inception. I like the smokes here, but, you know, obviously it obscures vision, but you know where you're still throwing this Nitrocell. And there's only 15 seconds left. Obviously, Rips just tries to time it, but obviously went a little bit early. Harambe now goes to the plan, but all it will take is one swing. Utility to go out. One of the gas babes did definitely miss. Mentalist didn't quite hit the mark with those gas babes, and Aspie falls. Suddenly, Direwolves are actually in a winnable position in a 2 versus 3, and the Bleed need to go for the retake. They have to work to get this win.
And Ray has hatch control. That's the key denominator. If he can hold the hatch, then Bleed can't counter defuse. They'll stack up above. They'll look to clear out this position. Ray up close. 417 in hand. Gets the first. The second will know exactly where he is, but doesn't land the shots. Hoven falls. A 2 versus 2. Hatch control conceded.
No way.
Reaps will get one. It's now Reaps to cover. Harambe repositions. Can Aspie just stick? He might be able to, and he does. Wow. Bleed hold on in the post, and Direwolves continue to crumble.
Reaps watching blue stairs. Reaps getting the kill through the hatch. It's Reaps that has won probably 3 rounds now single-handedly for Bleed Esports. He's been the difference maker in the grudge match, in the reunion. Match point, Bleed Esports, executive, CEO, we go, and there's no OSA for the Direwolves. It makes planting here so much more difficult in what has already been a very difficult match for these attacking teams. Direwolves have still yet to find an attacking round win on Bank. They got themselves into that round though. Signs of life, but maybe a little bit too late. Ultimately, Bleed, their star player, has shown up big time, and he's gotten some help. Skux has been great. Hoven as well. Mental is playing the support role, the diffuser role, the hard breach role, all of these anchor roles. So don't worry about his KD stats at all. It does not matter. Same for Aspie. There's a team here. Give them time, and they can do some really good things for Bleed Esports in the future.
5 seconds to go. Attackers are heading out to defuse a bomb.
As we mentioned earlier, due to the nature of the Asia format, 3 teams go through to the last chance qualifier for spots at the major. The remaining teams go through to the open qualifiers, and as we've slated it, it looks like it's a top 4 heavy league. That means that a team will miss out. Bleed are one of those 4. And perhaps after a performance like this, provided they can convert it, very much in the discussion for the top 3. They have played very well tonight, and they've had it against them as well. The first half, which feels like it wasn't that long ago now, wasn't easy for them, but they've continued to fight hard and have genuinely made Direwolves look second tier on these attacks. They are really, really struggling, and Bleed playing as a unit, playing their roles really well. And yes, Reaps is playing well. Yes, he's the win condition here and there, but I think it would be unwise to say he's the sole reason why Bleed are winning these rounds.
No, he's not the sole reason, but he's a big reason for a couple of really key moments in certain rounds. And, you know, those are the kind of rounds where the Direwolves maybe would have won an extra 1 or 2 rounds. Regardless, though, how much stock do you actually put into Bleed's defense versus just the Direwolves' inability to attack? Harambe back on the rappel, 1.5 minutes. But this time with no diffuser. Jackie Wu is going to be the bearer of that.
Well, Kanto opened up. Direwolves expediting that process a little better this time, shaping up for pressure through lobby. The Ash and Pika may be able to play rappel or even sneak through square late. See how Bleed respond. Vacating the area of CEO for now. Drones go forward. Still plenty remain for the Direwolves to gain information and to help in their clear. And the next obstacle, though, will be getting up onto that banana position, up the spiral staircase. Hallway is exposed, but it's a clash to greet them. So again, it looks sketchy for the Direwolves, but it is more confident than their last attempt. They have 30 seconds to get this done.
Oh, they've lost Jackie Wu, though. He was carrying that diffuser. I think top of the bananas there. Skux from front desk, peeks out the window. Who's going to be the one to respond? It's going to be Pika that loses this battle, though. Souffle, okay, wins out. Obviously can't go for the revive. Aspie's there. 10 seconds, though. Reaps. He started this, and I think he's looking to end it as well. It won't be single-handedly. He's got a lot of help from his new teammates. It's a big win for Bleed Esports, for Reaps against his old team. He wins the grudge match. He wins this reunion. It was supposed to be drama-filled. It was supposed to be the best of this season, but I tell you what, in the end, Bleed have just done it easy. The MVP, it's the best player in this region. Reaps goes and just drops 16 against his old team. Talk about a statement.
Wow, incredible. We expected a close and competitive game. That is exactly what we got, but wow, I think the efforts of Direwolves were dampened there a little bit there by Bleed. Like I mentioned, made them look second grade. Bleed are seriously looking really, really good. And despite, I think, Direwolves' best efforts to maybe throw them off from the veto, it does not get rewarded, and that is devastating for them.
Yeah, just been given word actually by Pro on the desk. Apparently, it's the Direwolves' first domestic loss since July 31st, 2022. Crazy. Obviously, in other leagues at different levels, obviously they've had losses, but still, nevertheless, that's, yeah, obviously not a good statistic for the Direwolves. They'll be very displeased with their performance on that game, because, I mean, I think their attack, they didn't even win a single attacking round. The closest they had was that Locker CCTV, which was shut down by Reaps with a nice double, one through the hatch, one over towards Blue Stairs, and that was it. Round was over. Give full credit to Bleed, especially when you consider they won the first 2 rounds and then 4 in a row to the Direwolves, and I think we started to sing the tune that the Direwolves' experience had started to show through, that their experience was going to be probably the telling factor in this game. Well, throw experience out the window, who cares? If you've got the raw fragging power of Reaps and clearly a team that has so much potential, which was not wasted in this game at all. Just a little bit meta there from our last match with wasted potential, but still, did it live up to the billing for you, or was it a bit of a letdown considering in the end it was a little bit one-sided in that second half?
I think the first half definitely did. It was obviously incredibly entertaining, and Direwolves showed that at least in that half they were able to adapt and overcome, because Bleed came out of the gates really strong and then just hit a brick wall that Direwolves laid out for them. So in that sense, yes. But as a whole, the second half was a complete letdown from Direwolves. We didn't see that same ability to disrupt what Bleed were putting on the table and leaving for them, and unfortunately they'll now need to collect those scraps. It's a pretty key loss to fall behind another contender for the top 3, so we'll see if Direwolves can pick themselves up heading forward.
I'll certainly have to. Short break for us, and then back to the desk with the best host in the business.